Imagine waking up one morning and learning that the largest army on earth is marching straight toward your city. 140,000 soldiers, hundreds of cannons, siege engines so massive they shook the ground beneath them. This was not a raid. This was not a skirmish. This was the Ottoman Empire, at the absolute peak of its military power, coming to swallow an entire civilization whole. The city in their crosshairs? Vienna, the heart of Habsburg Europe. And if Vienna fell, there was nothing standing between the Ottoman army and the rest of Western Europe. No mountains, no rivers, no armies, nothing. Today we are going back to the summer of 1683, to 61 of the most terrifying, desperate, and world-changing days in human history. This is the Siege of Vienna. And this changes everything. To understand why Vienna mattered so much, we need to go back, way back. By the late 1600s, the Ottoman Empire was one of the most powerful states on the planet, stretching from North Africa to the borders of Persia, from the Arabian Peninsula all the way to the gates of Central Europe. This was an empire that had been expanding for over 300 years. And they were not done. The Ottomans had already taken Constantinople in 1453. Ending the Byzantine Empire forever. They had crushed the Hungarians at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526. They had pushed deep into Central Europe, establishing vassal states and collecting tribute from terrified kingdoms. Vienna had already survived one Ottoman siege, back in 1529, under Suleiman the Magnificent. That time the Ottomans pulled back. Bad weather, supply problems, a city that refused to break. But now in 1683, they were back, and this time they came prepared. Leading this massive campaign was Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, an ambitious, ruthless, and deeply confident commander who believed Vienna would be his greatest trophy. He had the blessing of Sultan Mehmed IV. He had the largest Ottoman army assembled in decades. And he had one burning ambition: to finish what Suleiman had started. Vienna would fall, Europe would open up, and Kara Mustafa would become the most powerful man in the Islamic world. That was the plan. In the spring of 1683, the Ottoman army began its march westward from Adrianople. And this was no ordinary army. We are talking about 140,000 to 150,000 men. Janissaries, the elite infantry of the Ottoman world, professional soldiers trained from childhood. Sipahi, cavalry, fast, deadly, experienced in open battle. Thousands of support troops, engineers, and camp followers. And the siege equipment, massive cannons, tunneling equipment, supplies for a long campaign. The Ottoman logistical train stretched for miles behind the main army. When they arrived outside Vienna in July 1683, the sight must have been absolutely terrifying. The city's defenders numbered around 15,000 soldiers, plus civilian volunteers, against 140,000. Emperor Leopold I, the Habsburg ruler, had already fled the city with his court. He left behind Count Ernst Rudiger von Starhemberg to command the defense. Starhemberg was a tough, experienced soldier. He knew the odds were almost impossible, but he also knew one critical thing. He just had to hold long enough for help to arrive, if help ever arrived. The Ottoman siege officially began in mid-July 1683. Kara Mustafa's strategy was calculated. Rather than throwing his men at Vienna's walls in suicidal frontal assaults, he chose a more methodical approach. Mining. Ottoman engineers began digging tunnels, saps, underneath Vienna's massive bastions. The plan was to pack these tunnels with gunpowder and blow the walls apart from underneath. Day after day, the tunneling continued, and day after day, Vienna's defenders tried desperately to stop them. Counter-mining teams dug their own tunnels, trying to. France, under Louis XIV, actually saw the Ottoman siege as an opportunity. A weakened Habsburg Empire meant more power for France. Louis XIV offered no help. Many German princes hesitated. Getting involved meant risking their own territories. But one man answered the call. King John III Sobieski of Poland. Sobieski was already a legendary military commander, a man who had spent his entire career fighting the Ottomans on Poland's southern borders. He understood better than anyone what an Ottoman breakthrough into Central Europe would mean. Not just for Austria, for Poland, for all of Christian Europe. He negotiated the Holy League, an alliance between Poland, the Habsburg Empire, and various German states under the banner of Pope Innocent XI. And then he began marching south with his army. Around 70,000 to 80,000 relief troops in total. Poles, Germans, Austrians, moving as fast as they possibly could toward Vienna. Inside the city, messengers were sent out, at enormous personal risk, to tell Starhemberg that help was coming. Hold on, just hold on a little longer. But time was running out, fast. September 11th, 1683. The relief army reached the Kahlenberg Hills overlooking Vienna, and what they saw below them was staggering. The Ottoman camp was enormous, stretching for miles around the besieged city. Thousands of tents, horses, cannons, the full might of the Ottoman war machine laid out before them, and Vienna's walls, battered, crumbling, barely holding. That night, signal fires were lit on the Kahlenberg Hills. Inside Vienna, Starhemberg's exhausted defenders saw those fires and understood. They were coming. The next morning, September the 12th, 1683, the Battle of Vienna began. The relief army attacked the Ottoman flanks from the hills, engaging in fierce fighting throughout the morning and early afternoon. The Ottomans fought hard. They knew what was at stake. But Kara Mustafa made a critical mistake. He divided his attention, trying to simultaneously continue the siege and fight off the relief army. His forces were stretched. His coordination was breaking down. And then came the moment that changed history forever. At approximately 5 p.m. on September 12th, King Sobieski personally led the largest cavalry charge in recorded history. 18,000 horsemen, riding downhill at full speed. At the front, the Polish Winged Hussars. These were the most feared heavy cavalry in the world. Enormous, armored knights on massive war horses, with giant wings of eagle feathers mounted on their backs, designed to make a terrifying roaring sound as they charged. The sound alone broke the morale of inexperienced troops. The Ottoman lines, already exhausted, already stretched, simply could not hold. In less than 3 hours, the Ottoman army collapsed completely. Kara Mustafa fled. His camp was abandoned, left with enormous treasures, supplies, and even the legendary Ottoman battle standard. Vienna was saved. The consequences of September 12th, 1683, were immediate and enormous. Kara Mustafa fled to Belgrade, where he was executed on the orders of Sultan Mehmed IV, strangled with a silk cord, as was the Ottoman custom for disgraced officials. His head was sent back to Constantinople in a velvet bag. For the Ottoman Empire, the defeat at Vienna marked the beginning of a long, slow decline in Europe. Never again would Ottoman armies threaten Central Europe so directly. The empire would spend the next 2 centuries gradually losing territory, a process that would not end until World War I. For Europe, the victory was electrifying. Sobieski became a hero across the continent. The Holy League pressed its advantage, launching counter-offensives that would eventually push the Ottomans out of Hungary entirely. The Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699, just 16 years later, formalized these massive territorial losses for the Ottomans. The geopolitical map of Europe had been permanently redrawn, and it all traced back to 61 days in the summer of 1683. To defenders who refused to surrender, to a Polish king who answered the call, and to 18,000 horsemen charging downhill at exactly the right moment. History is full of moments where everything could have gone differently. If Vienna's walls had collapsed 1 week earlier, if Sobieski had arrived 1 day later, if Kara Mustafa had made different decisions, the world you and I live in today might look completely unrecognizable. That is the power of a single battle, a single moment, a single decision.